If it's indecent, please leave them off. I just like to see who I'm speaking to, though I know it's not always possible. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Well, this is a good section for this time of year because we just finished in the Bhagavatam some Balaram adventures, and now we're doing Krishna adventures, and it's a wonderful time between Balaram's appearance and Krishna's appearance on our calendar. So this is a good time. So, oh my God, to give a context to what we're looking at in this chapter, Krishna had defeated this king who had 16,000, I think, kidnapped wives, and no one's going to visit with a woman who's already been with another man, and according to the culture at the time. So Krishna married all 16,000. So that's the context we're in. And Narada Muni, the great transcendental spaceman, decided to visit Krishna at his palaces. So that's the storyline here. And there's a purpose to it, and the purpose is very important. It's the purpose of Janmashtami. Each of us can spend unlimited hours talking about ourselves. And have you ever been with a person who really, really likes to just talk about themselves all the time? And when you're with someone like that, after a while, you're going to get very, very bored. We're people. We want relationships. We don't want to be with someone who just gives us an endless monologue. So it's different, though. When we're in the Krishna book, turns out that the more we hear about Krishna, the more interesting it becomes, the more we become attached. Why did Prabhupada produce Krishna book so early on? And the reason is so we can become attached to Krishna. Now, you don't read the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam until you've done the other 9, till you're kind of warmed up to the philosophical concepts, till you have done some purification yourself, and you're ready to get into the intimate pastimes of Krishna. Yet Prabhupada began with that, practically speaking. What a strange approach when you think about it. Yet Prabhupada, in his brilliance, was able to incorporate the philosophical imperatives of the first 9 cantos into the Krishna book, so that whoever's reading the Krishna book really gets a feel for Krishna. And that's what it's about. So now we're in the actual 10th canto part. When this was translated by Haridayananda Maharaj and his team, I was actually ran the BBT division producing the books, so I was intimately involved. This part was easier than other parts because they already had Prabhupada's Krishna book to go by, and they just would simply check the verse translation against how Prabhupada described it in Krishna book. So this is very analogous to Krishna book with some expansion of the thoughts in the purports. Again, just giving a context for the verses that we're going to look at today. Now, we'll begin with verse 18 and chant the Sanskrit on 19 and go up to 22. So first, Om Jnana Tinmyasa Jnana Jnana Chakshurumulita Sri Gurave Namaha. Now I've seen your feet, which grant liberation to your devotees, and this is Narada Muni speaking, which even Brahma and other great personalities of unfathomable intelligence can only meditate upon within their hearts, and which those who have fallen into the well of material existence resort to for deliverance. Please favor me so I may constantly think of you as I travel about. Please grant me the power to remember you. Now, this is a beautiful prayer in the Bhagavatam. It's a prayer very close to my heart. Around the time of year, our Lord Balaram's appearance, I'll reveal my confidential mind. In the morning, I have my prayers, and around this time, I'm always praying, Lord Balaram, grant me the strength so I can do my service. Please, Lord Balaram, let me grow a brain, because my service is very difficult. And if you could help me grow a brain, I'd appreciate it. So it's a time that we're praying for service. So here, Narada Muni is in that same mood. He's not praying to be given some gift other than grant me the power to remember you. This describes the perfect prayer. My prayer is to be closer to you. There's I'm going to play you a few songs today that will help explain all of this. But we'll get to the verse first. Tato Nayad Avisad Geham Krishna Payanta Sa Narada Yogeshvarash Anga Yoga Maya Vivitsaya. Narada then entered the palace of another of Lord Krishna's wives, my dear king. He was eager to witness the spiritual potency possessed by the master of all mystic power. There he saw the Lord playing at dice with his beloved consort and his friend Uddhava. Lord Krishna worshipped Narada by standing up, offering him a seat, and so on. And then, as if he did not know, asked him, when did you arrive? Because he had just saw Krishna in another palace and had greeted him and stood up and even washed his feet. And now he's saying, when did you arrive? Man, I just saw you over there. But it's a different Krishna, but the same Krishna. This will bewilder Narada. What can needy persons like us, Krishna speaking, do for those who are full in themselves? In any case, my dear Brahmana, make my life auspicious. Thus addressed Narada was astonished. He stood up silently and went to another palace. This time Narada saw that Lord Krishna was engaged as an affectionate father petting his children. And it goes on and on like this. Now, a few lessons to be learned. One, in my observation, 3/4 of a century of observing things, I tend to be an observer, I noticed that some women can be pretty good at multitasking. I hardly have found any man who can multitask successfully. Women's brains have a better integration of left and right half, as neurologically confirmed, and some maybe because they have a variety of duties who can actually multitask. Well, most men, like myself, the more I try it, the more I fail. Except there's one man I know who is an excellent multitasker. He can multitask better than anybody, and that's Krishna. Now, what does multitasking mean in the concept of Krishna? I'll give two ways to look at it. One is multitasking means he can be in 16,000 palaces at the same time, bewildering Narada at every moment. That's when, by expanding himself, he can do that. Lord Balaram did that when he had to fight 7 bulls, expand himself into 7 warriors. And next thing you knew, these ferocious bulls were defeated. So that's one way. Another way of multitasking is Krishna does many things at once in all of our personal lives. You all can tell a story how Krishna did many things at once. And I find it myself, like, for example, sometimes it's time for me to change my service, but I don't like changing my service. Whatever I'm doing, I like sticking to it. But Krishna really wants me to change my service. I've had many different services over the years. And the next thing I know is everything goes wrong. Things that normally wouldn't go wrong, go wrong. And then it's as if Krishna's pushing me, waiting me to open a door, because Krishna never closes a door without opening for each and every one of you another door. But we're stubborn. We want to be the controller, so we don't realize that. But Krishna, in his unique ability to multitask, may be closing a door, but another door is being opened. So part of this chapter is to see Krishna as a great multitasker. Now, sometimes in this chapter, the issue arises, and maybe I'll bring it up now because somebody will bring it up in questions, that isn't Krishna being mundane? He has wives or children. He's playing a game with Uddhava. He's just behaving as described later on in this chapter as an ordinary householder. One may wonder, what's going on here? Well, the difference is that Krishna is Krishna. Just like if I would call out a name, I see my friend Dr. Hugo there. So I call out his name and I say, Hugo, Hugo. Hugo's not, he's not in my room. Call out Krishna's name, he's actually with me. So Krishna has this property of everything he does becomes completely transcendental. We can experience it in the test of the name. For example, I'm at the University of Florida, and sometimes students, I challenge them. I want you to chant "Go Gators." Gator, alligators, the team mascot. So everyone in town talks about gators. They're kind of little nasty reptiles. But anyway, everyone talks about gators and they're in gator consciousness. So I say to students, okay, for 1 week, 5 minutes, no longer. You have to promise me not a minute longer. You chant Hare Krishna mantra. And then for 5 minutes, the following week, you chant Go Gators. And then I tell them no less than 5 minutes. So no more than 5 minutes of Hare Krishna and no less than 5 minutes of Go Gators. Nobody can stick to the 5 minutes of Hare Krishna. It gets to them by the end of the week. They have to chant more. And nobody can chant even 5 minutes of Go Gators. Even if for 3 minutes, they're disgusted with that mantra and want to stop it. Because one is connecting with Krishna and the other is connecting with the reptiles. And though there may be some among us who think there are reptilians walking on 2 legs with us, we'll leave that one out of this discussion. Gosh, I just opened myself up for question and answer. Okay. So when we engage in our ordinary household life, unless Krishna's center, it becomes mundane. It becomes like chewing the chewed. You all know that expression, chewing the chewed. Prabhupada uses it. But I'm going to give you a little song from 1961 that will give you the essence of chewing the chewed. And the distinction between how Krishna does it and how we do it. So hold on, we're going to share screen with you. One moment here. Okay, we got it queued up. An old song from 1961. It discusses chewing the chewed. It's kind of funny. It's a little entertainment for you. Here it goes.
Oh me, oh my, oh you, whatever shall I do? Hallelujah, the question is peculiar. I'd give a lot of dough if only I could know the answer to my question. Is it yes or is it no? Does your chewing gum lose its flavor on the bedpost overnight? If your mother says don't chew it, do you swallow it in spite? Can you catch it on your tonsils? Can you hear it left and right?
Could you hear that okay? Okay. That was does your chewing gum lose its flavor on the bedpost overnight from 1961? Now, I put that on because it doesn't, that's to give the essence of what chewing the chewed means. You have some chewing gum and then the chewing gum wears out after a while and there's no more flavor in it. So that's what happens when Krishna's not at the center. But when Krishna's at the center, Narada Muni can visit 16,000 palaces. And in each palace, Krishna's doing something different. And it's more and more interesting. So what looks like mundane is not mundane. And that's the key point here. And similarly, in each of our lives, what looks like mundane, we're doing our household duties, we're doing the things we must do, whatever it is it mundane or not is all determined by, is it connected to Krishna or not? Now, if we want to connect to Krishna, we need to know Krishna. And I'm going to give you another song, because I like songs from that era. This talks about what it takes to know Krishna. And I'll put that on for you. Here it goes.
Just to see him smile makes my life worthwhile. To know him is to love him, and I do, 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 and I'd be good to him.
And you can hear that okay? To know him is to love him. So that's the essence. Now, we can take a mundane song like that, talking about some guy, or when I always hear that song, I remember it from the 60s, of course, when I hear it, it makes me think, yes, that is the essence of Krishna consciousness. To know him is to love him. So here we're trying to know Krishna. So I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions or comments before I go on. Any questions? Anybody want to raise their hand or unmute? Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hey,
always delighted to hear your realizations. I've heard that you said something is mundane or something is transcendental. My understanding is that Prabhupada tells us that if the activity is selfish, if it's for my pleasure, then there's something lacking. But if we're actually trying to please Krishna, then it's transcendental, that there's love there. There's not something like that we're trying to get something out of it. We do get something out of it, but it's a byproduct. And even coming to class, if I drift into the idea of whether or not I'm being entertained, becomes a little dry. But if I'm thinking, I'm in this class as an offering to Krishna, I hope to please him. I hope Srila Prabhupada please will making some effort to understand and hear about the Lord. Then that little shift of attitude of whether I'm trying to enjoy it or whether it's an offering seems to, as far as I know from what Srila Prabhupada told us, make the difference between mundane and transcendental. Am I doing this for you, Lord? Even going to class or even dressing the deity, I like to do it. There's an element of that, and if we drift too far into that, then somehow or other it doesn't have the same result, right? Is that correct?
You brought up a point that's giving me a lot of thought over the years. If I am serving and I am getting pleasure out of my service, does that mean then that I'm serving because I'm a servant, or I'm serving because I'm the enjoyer, because I get the pleasure out of my service? It's an interesting question. In other words, can we ever really, truly be not selfish? That's a big question. To rephrase it a different way, can we ever act in a way that's just for the benefit of others, not ourselves, because by acting that way, we get a certain pleasure? Does anybody have an answer to this very curious question that Adi brought up? I've rephrased it a little, but I think, Adi, I'm capturing the question you brought up. Does anybody have an answer to this? I need one pretty quickly to avoid blooping here now, so I could use some help.
Here's the analogy: if you're looking in the mirror and you're putting lipstick on, then the image in the mirror also has lipstick. So our pleasure is to please the beloved. We're not that the pleasure isn't there, but it's not our objective. It comes automatically as a byproduct of us trying to engage in devotional service, because that's our nature, right? Isn't it? Byproduct.
Yeah. Well, next time I put on my lipstick, I'm going to think about that. But that is a good way to put it. Bhima Prabhu, I always like to hear your comments.
Haribol Prabhu. I'm sorry I just got on, but that was a very important question. One would see in the life of the saints that I'm sure Haridas Thakur or Christ or Prahlad were not enjoying themselves. Task to prove their things. Well, to remember that if we would have our service that we enjoy, and I've seen this many times. Just a very quick example, there was this garland maker in the Boston Temple. She did a wonderful job. In fact, anytime anybody would call in, she would be doing the garlands for deities until 3 o'clock in the morning, making sure all the garlands were done. And a lot of people called in often, and I would see her because I would be chanting early or something like that. And I was amazed. But then one day, new temple president came on and took away the service of being a garland maker. And she cried and was devastated. And, I'm not going to go into the long conversation I had because I wasn't advanced enough to tell her, the things that we are discussing now. But ultimately, the enjoyment, first of all, Krishna doesn't want us to suffer, but he didn't want the gopis to suffer from his disappearance. But in order for them to grow, and in order for us to grow, we have to be put in that, as they call, dark night of the soul. When we feel like we're not enjoying so-called getting reciprocation, it's because Krishna wants us to go hunting for him everywhere. not just right then and there in the place that we are content and sometimes complacent to stay because it's comfortable. Radhanath Maharaj always said, you will know you are doing devotional service when you do it joyfully, even though it's very uncomfortable to do it. It's not a matter of comfort or enjoyment. So if we always remember that no pain, no gain, which is very simple, if we can always remember that, if we're putting through our, in horse training, we have a thing, we put a horse through his paces, walk, trot, canter, gallop, over and over and over again until he's a sweaty mess. And he doesn't want to do that, but it's necessary to get him to bring him to his potential so that he can bring joy to the master. And so Krishna puts us through our paces, and one of those paces would be, I know you love your service. I love what you do for me, but let's see if you can do something else that's even more, that requires more for you to give, like Christ did, like Prahlad did, like Haridas Thakur did, like Prabhupada did. Anyways, sorry for rambling on. That's what popped up in my heart when I heard you ask that question.
I appreciate that. I'll make a comment, then get to Jamuna Jaya. Kunti did something I don't do. She prayed for difficulties. Me, when I go to the pharmacy, I don't ask for something to get me sick. I ask for something to get me better. But Kunti didn't mind the difficulties because it took her closer to Krishna. So as we get more advanced, everything Bhima said becomes our realization that whatever Krishna, as the Shishasika says, you can treat me with difficulty. You're still my Lord, birth after birth. So as our consciousness improves, we become the weeds, the devotional weeds are plucked. Then we get to the point where, if it's difficult or not difficult, it's okay. One of my very important stories that I've heard that impacted me is when Prabhupada was alone in New York, how human he was. He was determined to do his service. People told him, don't come to America. You're too old. You'll die. Prabhupada already wasn't well before he left, had heart attack on the way over. And even Srimati Moraji, who gave him the ticket, said, you're too old to go. But at that time in India, 69 was very old. Nowadays, things have shifted a little, but it was very old. And to leave Vrindavan, it was just so weird. And when Prabhupada got to America, no place to stay, crashing in hippies' pads, sharing refrigerator with the cat food and everything else. And it was a tough time. And Prabhupada used to go to the pier and he would visit the shipmaster and ask, when's the next ship back to India? And finally, the port master said, you're coming and asking, but you're never going. Why are you doing that? And Prabhupada said, because I just want to know that there's a ship going back to India. It makes me feel better. Because it was such a lonely, difficult existence. But Prabhupada never got on the ship back to India. He just did his service. And what's the lesson to us? We may have difficulties. Let's not deny that it's tough. Prabhupada didn't deny it was tough, saying, oh, I'm ecstatically happy that nothing's going right. No, I want to know there's a ship going back to India. But he never gave up his service either. He just did it and did his service, knowing that that was his duty. And that's ultimately what defined him. And that's a huge inspiration for me when my service gets difficult. So we are going to shift to Jamuna Jaya. You have a question or comment, please?
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for class. I feel like everyone's kind of said what I wanted to say, but when you asked the question about the pleasure in joining service, I was like, I want to hear your answer. But I just had two quick thoughts. One is that ultimately, I guess what we want to do is that our pleasure is pleasing Krishna. So that automatically would be the pleasure if we were really in the heart space of like the pleasure of my love is my pleasure. So that's where we're going. But then that just something that Guru Dev says, he says that which you do the best, you can offer with the most love. And oftentimes it's what we do the best that we take pleasure in. And Krishna is pleased by that, and we can offer it with love. So I was really thinking, to answer your question, that's one thing I always think about. We do things, Krishna's given us these gifts, and we do them well, and that gives us pleasure. But then it's not about us. If we then use those gifts with that pleasure and give it to please our love, which is Krishna. So that's one thought I had. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
There's always the danger of pride entering into our lives. It's when we're doing our service. I'll tell a personal story that puts it in context, and maybe this is helpful. Somehow I was very fortunate to meet Prabhupada in unusual circumstances in Mayapur. Most of you know the story, but I was the only guest at the first Mayapur festival. No buildings, nothing, just some tents and a hut, and I was the only guest there. I went up there to help with food relief for Bangladesh refugees. I was a high school teacher, not that far away. Maybe, 14-hour train ride, which in India those days wasn't that far away. And so somehow I got in a very fortunate position. Then I was back in New York. When Prabhupada would go to New York, I'd get to see him, sometimes even drive him. And one time, I was feeling very depressed that I've had Prabhupada's mercy, but I just don't feel I've surrendered properly, whatever. And Prabhupada was, so when Prabhupada was walking into the temple room, I decided I didn't want him to see me, so I kind of hid in the corner. And I offered obeisances before he could even round the corner and see me. But somehow I'm on the ground in the corner. Prabhupada saw me. He stopped, waited till I finished my prayer, which I said very slowly, so he would have been in the temple room, stood up. Prabhupada said to me, "So glad to see you," and gave me one of the rare things he did, a hug. And it was Krishna's way of saying, "No, Brahma, you are doing the right thing. You are making good progress." Because some devotees were, because I'd had Prabhupada's mercy, and then I did something really weird. I was in graduate school. Devotees didn't do that then. And there were things like that I wasn't living in an ashram, and there was some prejudice that way. So then that was Prabhupada's way of telling me I'm doing the right thing. Another time I was in New Orleans, and I'm walking in the back of the temple room, there's Prabhupada, and somebody motions me to move forward a little bit. So I'm thinking, maybe I'm blocking the doorway. I don't think so. So I move forward. And then somebody motions me, no, move forward. There's nobody behind me. So I move forward. Finally, Brahmananda Swami stands up and says, "Come here." And then I understood what he wanted. Prabhupada had invited me to sit next to him, not on the Vyasasan, but on the floor next to him. So then I felt this is pretty good. My mood was very much service mood. I was there just to serve. I didn't see myself as anybody special, and I just wanted to be in the back of the room listening. So then finally, 1976, I'm getting initiated. I got initiated. Prabhupada wasn't at the initiation. He wasn't feeling well that day. So he was upstairs at the Manhattan skyscraper building we had. And the next day is Vyasa Puja. Prabhupada's feeling better. He's at Vyasa Puja. So I walk up to get my cookie, and I'm very proud. Prabhupada had signaled me out several times, said, this way and that way, as I gave some examples of. So I walk up to him. Now I'm his disciple. He'll be so glad to see me. Imagine that. Now I'm his disciple. And I walked up to him full of pride. I mean, I could hardly think of how proud I was. And I walk up to get a cookie, and Prabhupada hands me a cookie, and he looks right through me like I'm a piece of completely clean glass. Completely clean. He couldn't, as if he didn't see me at all. And immediately I understood what happened. Prabhupada the face is a mirror of the mind, and Prabhupada could read my face and understood that I was a quite number one rascal that time. Though I'd just gotten initiated, I actually had become very proud. And so Prabhupada smashed the pride without one word, just that look. And I remember that look. That's not one you'll forget very easily. And so that's the difference. Anybody can approach Prabhupada for a cookie with, I'm your humble servant. Thank you. I'm grateful for the cookie. Or, I am your humble servant. And approach that way. And so it all depends on our attitude. How are we, what is our heart saying? Where is our heart? So similarly, when we're reading Krishna book in these chapters, its purpose, these chapters, is to purify our heart by getting us attached to Krishna. But we can read these and think, who is Krishna? He's just an ordinary person. We can read it that way. And that's why Prabhupada generally recommends you read the nine cantos before you get intimate with this. Though the Krishna book, as I mentioned earlier, kind of gives the essence of the 9 cantos, so you can kind of jump ahead. But the whole purpose here is to get attached to Krishna. But in the same way, we can think, hey, why should Krishna have 16,000 wives? Why not me? Or a lady may say, why do I have to live in a dumpy apartment in Brooklyn? Krishna has all these palaces. Why can't I have one? Even Sudama Brahman's wife said, how come you have a friend like Krishna? We have to be so poor. You give this chip rice to Krishna. Sudama was too embarrassed to even give it to Krishna. But Krishna saw it hidden in his hand, took it, and accepted that love offering and said, okay, I'll make your life easy. I'll give your wife a nice palace. Sometimes people ask me, what's the secret of being married 52 years? And I say, it's simple. I always get the last word. That's it. You may wonder what the last word is. I think most of you know. It's yes, dear. But so the idea is of service. Okay, as we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions, are there any questions or comments or reflections?
Brahmatirtha Prabhu, what is the difference between being selfish and being an individual, have an individuality in our service?
That's a very good question. Go on. Is there more to the question?
Yeah, Arjuna was asked to fight, and that coincided with his nature. Gopis were not asked to fight in the Kurukshetra war, and they did not coincide with their psychophysical nature. So how come that the instruction they were getting coincided with what they liked to do anyway?
Well,
is that selfishness or individuality?
You've asked a critical question, a very practical one. Arjuna first was pretty smashed. You're a fool. You're not this body. Deus vinyata dehe. It's pretty smashed. I mean, if I got smashed like that, I'd be, whoo. Imagine the Supreme Lord just smashing us as a fool. And then Krishna spends the rest of the Gita building Arjuna back up. Here's who you are. And he gets into, especially when we get chapter 13, 14, etc. in the Gita, Krishna goes, you may not be this body, but these are the modes of nature that you are dealing with. And you're dealing with these three modes of nature, and you need to know that. And this particular body you have has a certain nature. The secret of devotional service is not to renounce your body, it's to use your body in service. Because renounce the body, that's a very temporary move, it doesn't work. But when we use it in service, it actually works. So if we act according to our nature in service, it works. Now, how do you analyze this? Well, we analyze this through the three modes of nature. So if we do it in ignorance, actually, that means we're not doing it. In ignorance, my service is to offer the artik, but I'm going to take a nap instead. That's the mode of ignorance. In a mode of passion, my service is to offer the artik, and I'm going to offer the artik so people who are watching see I'm the best artik offerer there is in the world. I remember the first time I offered artik back in the 70s. It was quite a thrilling experience, but I was worried. I can't blow a conch shell. What do I do? Eventually I learned. So I had another devotee friend of mine hide behind a curtain with a conch shell, a curtain by a window. So I held the conch shell to my lips and he blew it. So it looked like I was blowing it, but it wasn't coming from me. But my mood then was to offer artik, but I had my own physical limitations. I couldn't blow a conch shell, so did the needful. So I wasn't being prideful. I was being practical. But if other times, maybe I've offered artik, I have, and I felt, boy, everyone's watching me. Look how good I am at it. And I get things in the wrong order. I screw it up royally. I drop something. It's just the pride comes. Pride comes before the fall. So that's a mode of passion. And a mode of goodness is I'm offering artik because it is my seva to offer artik. It's my duty, and I'm just doing it out of duty. And eventually, as my heart gets more and more purified, I'm doing it out of love. So you begin with duty and you go out of love. So it depends on the mode of nature we're interacting with. And when we interact a mode of goodness, because we're doing it because we're supposed to do it, it rids our heart of the idea I'm doing it for my pleasure, I'm doing it for my ego. And so that stage of goodness, the preliminary stage of goodness, helps us get rid of the selfishness that's there. And then we get to the pure goodness, to the sattva, it turns into actual love. So it's progressing through the modes of nature. And if we feel that we're very selfish in our service, we have to examine what mode of nature we're inspired. And if we find our modes of nature are not what we want it to be, that's easy. That's anybody who realizes my mode of nature is just not where I want to be has made a huge advancement, because that's called self-realization. Oh, I'm not quite feel that goodness. So then there's reformatory things we do. I'm going to get up a little earlier. I'm going to get better association. I'm not going to eat spicy food at night. Those things that help raise our modes of nature. We're all individuals. So one man's food may be another man's poison, but each of us knows what we need to do to raise our modes of nature. The question is, will we do it? I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you, Prabhu. Wonderful answer. And this class, we hope you weren't lip syncing this class. There's no one hiding in your room giving that class for you. We ask questions. So it's a live.
Say that again.
We know that no one's hiding in your room behind the curtain.
Oh,
you're not lip syncing this class.
Oh, exactly. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. I hope you have a wonderful day, thinking of Krishna, especially during the best of times between Balaram's appearance and Krishna's appearance. Hare Krishna.
Is that Brahmatirtha blowing the conch there?
Yeah.
Shri Radha Murida Gaur Chandana Simha Bhagavani Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki.
From now on, every time the conch blows, I think of Brahmatirtha Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Afterglow. Questions, comments, angles of vision. Bhima Prabhu is here. He has all the answers. Anybody? Joshua, what's your takeaway? Let's hear from Joshua.
That's how it should.
I see his head is moving. He's not frozen. Joshua, are you in ecstasy? Yeah, there he
Yes,
is.
I am. I am. Yeah, it's just it was great to get up and I've been struggling with the modes of nature lately. Sometimes it's hard getting up and getting to class, and it's been good to get in. And actually, my daughter and I have been reading that Perfect Questions and Perfect Answers book before bed every day. So yeah, that's and yeah.
Thank you, Josh. It's a three-dimensional Krishna consciousness. You read the book, and then you hear from the person who contributed to the book. That is so nice. Such a wonderful opportunity for us to get edified by the association of devotees like Brahmatirtha Prabhu, and such deeply realized souls. Thank you, Joshua. Anybody else? Isaiah? Annabelle? Annabelle, what's your takeaway? Did you like the class? Was it funny? Do you eat spicy food before going to bed? No? Yeah. It's very hard to get up if you eat spicy food. Isaiah. Nice. See, they're very steady. Annabelle and Isaiah, very steady in their service of attending class. Okay, questions, answers. Hold on. Questions, angles of vision, voice cracks. Anybody? We need one more, and we'll complete the yajna for today. I remember Raj Vihari Prabhu was sharing. He has a community group with Wisdom of the Sages, and he said, sometimes I ask for questions, I open it up, and then no one comes up with questions. And then he said, but we're comfortable with it. We're comfortable with silence. So we're comfortable. It's the Bhagavatam. We're comfortable with silence. Bhima Prabhu comes to the rescue. Let's see.
Well, just what you said, Prabhu. we spin around in our heads. Am I doing this right? Is Krishna pleased, etc., etc. And sometimes it's just best to just try to get engaged and quiet that mind, like you said, just that silence. And within that silence, at least in my experience, in that silence, you will be given the answer. It's sort of like a welling in the heart, when two friends are together or two lovers are together. Sometimes just sitting side by side and maybe just a glance and a smile is enough. No words need to be said.
Yeah. With
So
your wife, a
similarly-
glance is enough to understand that you need to need to get to work.
Yeah, exactly. As Brahmatirtha says, I always get the last word in, which is yes, dear.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how clear Krishna's communication with us is. As soon as you quiet down your mind, as soon as you get off YouTube or whatever, then immediately Krishna comes through. Chant your rounds. Read your Bhagavatam. Do your service. Call up that devotee that inspires you. It's so clear. I don't know what it is. It's too lazy, too spaced out, too distracted to hear Krishna. But Krishna is perfectly capable of communicating with us very clearly. It's amazing. You quiet down immediately. You chant your rounds. Who has that? Is it just me? Everybody's looking guilty. I'm glad it's not just me. All right.
Sometimes Krishna's not giving you instructions to do sadhana. Sometimes he just says, think of me. Just think of me.
Or get off YouTube.
You don't have to go do something. Just sit still and think of me.
Yeah. And Krishna is always there. He never gives up on us. He never walks away. As soon as we choose to turn to him, he's right there, smiling. Every time I think of Krishna consciousness, I think of fun. Kirtan Prashadam. I'm free to come back to it anytime I want. I just have to have that volition to come back when I'm deviated. Hare Krishna. Okay, who wants to finish it off? Who wants to be the finisher today? If no one wants to speak, we'll ask Isaiah to roar. Isaiah, come up here. Finish it off. Annabelle, unmute the phone. Do it, Isaiah. Wow. That's called the Kashvani. Unmanifested voice. Isaiah, you know who Nrsingadev is? The lion incarnation of Krishna? Okay, Annabelle, he wants you to finish it off.
Okay.
Do it.
Oh.
Nice. See, Krishna is protecting us from our mind, from illusion, from all kinds of things. Thank you, Annabelle. Isaiah, Karen, thank you. Hare Krishna, take care. Come again tomorrow. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Brahmatirtha Prabhu ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Everybody on this call and on YouTube ki jai. Hare Krishna. Take care.